Hey y'all, I'm Hope. Welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I'd recommend you guys some quick short reads because I personally have been very busy in the last month, and so I've been really relying on books that I can kind of slot in between all of the school reading I'm doing and the assignments I'm working on. I'm relying on those a lot to get some leisure reading in around all of my school stuff, so I thought it'd be fun to recommend you guys some of my favorite short books, things that are quick and fast to read, and also talk about a few that I haven't read yet but I'm excited to get to. So the first recommendation I have is Return of the Sorceress by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This follows Yalxie, who used to be the master of the Guild of Sorcerers in this fantasy town, but then she was betrayed by someone close to her and ousted, and this is her trying to kind of get revenge and also kind of stop the person who's betrayed her, and along the way she's kind of facing the consequences of her actions that she took to become the master of the guild. And it's just a really interesting book about her reckoning with her past and taking responsibility for the things that she's done, while also trying to prevent something pretty dark from happening as a result of the actions of the person who's betrayed her. So she's kind of confronting him and trying to get him to take responsibility as well. So I really enjoyed this. I think it's really fun, and it is incredibly short. You can barely see the pages in there, and this was one I definitely read in like a single afternoon and just absolutely loved it. The next recommendation I have is not so much one as it is 6 so far, but these are the Murderbot books by Martha Wells. All but one of these are novellas. Network Effect is the only one that isn't, but I found it to be a really fast-paced novel, and I got through it very quickly. I think it took me 2 days to read, so all of these I think make really great short reads. I know a lot of people have talked about how great Murderbot is, and I'm going to put these down and just hold up the first book. I know Murderbot's very popular, and I just need to echo that recommendation because Murderbot is so much fun. The thing I really love about these books is that they're very fast-paced, they're very short, literally read all of them in a single day except for Network Effect. And they're interesting to me in the sense that they're really fun space adventures. Murderbot's a fun character to follow, and I know Murderbot doesn't gel with everyone. They're very snarky, and it's a very strong personality, but it's a fun character to follow, and I think it's just such a fun space adventure. Every single installment is like action-packed and got some mysteries in it. It's just all really enjoyable, but also there's some interesting topics in all of these books about identity, about trauma and healing, about family. There's a lot of really interesting themes that are there to unpack if you want to, but you can also just have a fun time on these space adventures with Murderbot. The next recommendation I have is a manga. It's Way of the House Husband by Kosuke Ono. This follows Tatsu, who used to be a very feared member of the Yakuza, known as I think the Immortal Dragon, and he has since left the Yakuza to become a house husband. He's married, and he's just like this loving, doting husband. And this series is just a bunch of different, very fun vignettes of Tatsu doing very mundane things, but in like a really sketchy way, because he's just a scary guy. He's big, people are frightened of him, he's like, you know, big and bulky, and he has this like permanent scowl, but he's just like a really friendly, helpful person, and so it's really funny seeing him navigate these different situations where there's a lot of times misunderstandings between him and other people because they assume that he has bad intentions because of the way he looks, and his constant like perma-scary face. But it's just such a fun series, and the friendships that Tatsu has are fun. There's also some other recurring characters that begin to crop up across the series that are from his past and now are kind of playing into his present life. It's just really fun to follow all of Tatsu's adventures, especially because they're all incredibly silly. And yeah, this is just a series that makes me smile. It's just like good, lighthearted fun. The next two I have to recommend are both by Alia de Bedard, so I'm putting them together. The first one is Fireheart Tiger, which is a novella about a young princess who spent many years in a different kingdom and has now returned home and is dealing with the fallout of multiple abusive relationships, both with her mother and with the princess of the kingdom where she spent many years living. And as she's dealing with all of the fallout from this, her mother and that princess are trying to negotiate some sort of trade deal or something between their kingdoms, and she's kind of caught in between them. This is a darker one, I think, of this list. It's got some pretty heavy themes around abuse and about trauma, but I really think this is a beautifully written book, and I really like the journey that the protagonist goes on. This is one where I've forgotten the character's name. But I just really enjoyed her journey across the story, and I think that it has a pretty hopeful tone overall. So even though there's some difficult subject matter, you kind of come out the other side thinking like, okay, this protagonist is like, it's things are on the way up for her. She's gonna be okay. And I just think this is a really charming and thoughtful novella, especially for how short it is, because there's got a lot packed in for a very short book. The other one I have to recommend from Elliott David Ard is lighter, somewhat. This is the Blades and Dragons series, I believe is what it's called, but this first book is Of Dragons, Feasts, and Murders. This follows Tuon and Asmodeus, who are characters from her Dominion of the Fallen series, and this is following them as they are solving mysteries in Tuon's home kingdom. He's from the Water Dragon Kingdom, which is in the River Seine. The whole thing is set in like Gothic Paris. I love these, they're so much fun. It's Tuon and Asmodeus just like getting into trouble, trying to solve murders that, you know, it shouldn't be their problem to solve, but they get swept into solving them. And they both have very different personalities. You have Tuon, who's kind of a cinnamon roll, very sweet person, and he's a diplomat. And then you have Asmodeus, who is like stab first, ask questions later. So it's just fun to see their dynamic, and this series kind of deals both with like the murders that they're solving and also their relationship with each other and their relationship with some of their family members. And I just think it's all really well done and really enjoyable. These are some of my favorite kind of fantasy murder mysteries. I just think they're really fun, and I really like the way that Elliott David Ard kind of weaves together both the interpersonal elements of like Tuon and Asmodeus' relationship with each other and with, in the second book, with their nieces and nephews, along with the murder mystery aspect. Like, it all kind of comes together in a really interesting way. Next is one that I read for a class several years ago, and I still think about it all the time. This is Mother Tongue by Demetria Martinez. This is a story of a young woman who, I think her parents have died, and she's living with her aunt in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And this is set during the, I think, Civil War in El Salvador. And her aunt takes in a refugee who is trying to travel from El Salvador to Canada to apply for asylum. And so he's staying with them while he's getting his paperwork in order to do this. And it's about Mary's relationship with, I think his name is Jose? Yeah, Jose Luis. And it's about her relationship with him and about how he kind of helps her figure out what she wants to be, what kind of a person she wants to be, what she wants to do with her life, because she's feeling very stuck while she's living with her aunt in New Mexico. She feels like every day is kind of the same, and she doesn't really know what she wants for herself, and it's about Jose Luis kind of coming in, and through interacting with him and learning about his backstory and kind of supporting him in his journey of trying to help his people, but also trying to get safety for himself so that he can continue to do that, Mary comes to learn more about herself and kind of deal with some difficult things in her own past so that she can move forward and start building a life that she wants. And I really enjoyed this. I think it's got a really sweet like romance element in it, and I just really enjoyed the characters here. And it was one, again, that I read for a class, and it really surprised me how much I liked it. Next, I have Chronicle of a Death Foretold by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This one I read several years ago around Christmas. I bought it and then I read it the same day. This one is just such an interesting little book. This follows someone who's returning to this town years after a kind of vicious murder occurred and trying to unravel how this murder happened, because everybody in the town knew it was going to happen and nobody stopped it. So it's about like the social forces that led both to the murder and to the kind of lack of action on part of the rest of the citizens of this town. And so it was a really interesting story. I remember being completely obsessed with it. It just took me completely by surprise how much I loved this. I picked it up totally on a whim, and like I said, I read this entirely in one afternoon and ignored my family to do so. It's just a really interesting story because it is kind of looking at one small event, but looking at the larger scale social forces that led to that event happening. The last two recommendations I have that are ones that I've read are both from Victor LaValle. These are The Ballad of Black Tom and Destroyer. This is a short retelling of H.P. Lovecraft's The Horror at Red Hook that recenters the people of color who were very much at the original story's margins. I love this book. It has one of the creepiest endings I have ever read. And then Destroyer is a retelling of Frankenstein, where Dr. Frankenstein is a black woman whose son has been killed by the police. And this story is just so interesting, and I think it's such a fascinating use of the Frankenstein story and really powerful. And this one made me ugly cry. It was so just emotional and impactful, and I just cannot more highly recommend this. Like, I usually don't like graphic novels all that much, but this one is one that has completely stuck with me, that I think about all the time. And it's just a really fascinating use of the Frankenstein story to tell this new story that's very relevant to modern times and modern issues. Last few things I have here are all books that I have not read, but are ones that I'm really hoping to get to soon because I think I'm gonna love all of them. The first one I just got recently, and this is Tread of Angels by Rebecca Roanhorse. This one is a like fantasy murder mystery where there's these two twins. They were separated at birth, or not separated at birth, but they've been raised in different places. One of them stayed with their mother in the town of Gosha, and then one of them left and grew up with their father and at kind of a higher class than the other sister. And so now the wealthier, higher class sister is returning to Gosha only to find that her other sister has been, I don't know the names, which is why I keep having to say sister. I'm sorry, this is kind of confusing. Basically, the sister who remained in Gosha has been accused of murder, and the sister who is just returning to Gosha is trying to prove her sister's innocence, but kind of gets drawn into the corrupt politics of the town. The fantasy element is that there are fallen angels, and also I believe the town is built on mining a resource that came from the fallout of a war in heaven. So I think this sounds really fascinating, and I love everything I've read from Rebecca Roanhorse. I'm really excited to read this one because it sounds like it's going to be like right up my alley, and I cannot wait to fit this one in. The next two are both from Stephen Graham Jones. This is Mapping the Interior and Night of the Mannequins. I've heard great things about both of these, very mixed things in a lot of ways, but like people whose opinions I tend to agree with on horror have loved these. So I'm really looking forward to reading both of them. I've loved so far everything I've read from Stephen Graham Jones, and I think that I'm gonna really enjoy both of these. I keep putting these on TBRs and not getting to them, and it's really a shame because they are so short. But I really am hoping that I'm gonna finally get to these two this year because I think that they're gonna be really fantastic. And then the very last one that I'm excited for does not look like a short read and is massively heavy, but this is Saga. This is the compendium, I don't know why that was so hard to say, the compendium of the first 9 volumes of Saga. I've read volume 1 and I absolutely loved it. I just really enjoyed the characters and the story, and I was excited to continue on, except that it took me a while to get the compendium. I had originally been looking for volume 2 and I was struggling to find it at the time, and so I ended up buying this when it came out, and then I've just never got back and read it because I think I kind of need to reread volume 1 so that I can kind of refresh my memory on it. I remember parts of it, but it's been several years now since I read it. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. I hope that there was something in here that piqued your interest, and there's, you know, a nice short read for you to pick up at some point when you need something quick and easy. And I just want to say thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, I hope you'll consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting every Tuesday and Saturday, so there will be more content coming soon. And I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.